I am Pig.
And I'm Dan.
And we are
Pig&Dan.
Exactly. And we're here in a wonderful, Thursday afternoon in a lovely studio. I'm going to show you a bit of our creative process.
We're going to break it down basically into what
2 parts.
Piggy does and what Danny does.
You can't do the pig as well as I do.
Well,
anyways,
we're attached.
My process, yes, my time is good. My process is more of a creative process. So we'll start basically. We have our Logic. We open our Logic, and usually what I do is I'll directly sample a kick drum. Here's my kick from a track. You know, I will have bought. So I'll take a kick drum that's already mastered, that sounds good, because so I can get straight into the creative process rather than, filtering and creating that, spending 10 hours making a really good kick drum. I'll take one that's already made, and I can get onto the music writing and the other process. So once I have my kick drum done, which is this kick drum is from another one of our tracks. I don't know exactly which one, but it's one that sounds good. It's got the subs in it, and it's got the high end sort of click that you can hear it through the whole track. Okay. So then I'll go. Usually I'll use either have a TR8 to write my hi-hats. In this track, I've basically used the TR8 to do my percussions, and I've basically done the synths and the bass with the System 1, which we have up here. So a lot of times I'll just work on one. I'll do a track on one synth. It sounds very limited, but I'll find a certain sound, and then I'll take the same riff. For example, here we have a riff. Open it up, and I'll make my I'll paint in my riff, because I'm not a musician, so I do my riffs usually through the arrangement. I draw them, and then I'll start just cycling through different sounds till I find one that I like. Here's the riff. So in this example, we basically have a nice little pad. Usually I'd have the System 1 with me, the actual controller, and I'll play with here I haven't automated it, but what I do is I'll automate it live, but I'll record it directly into audio. I'm not so into MIDI automation. We don't play our tracks live. We always play our records live. So we rather record the live sessions without. I mean, I could record the automations on the Logic, but I don't. I mean, because I've lost so many things with MIDI in the past, that I believe that once I have it in audio, it's cemented. I'm not going to lose it, and it's just a way of working. So I'll have the pad. I'll have my bass drum going. Where is it here? I'll have, for example, hi-hats, that I've done on the TR8, and I'll start, automating that track for, let's say, 5-6 minutes, putting in delays, playing around with the auto filter, maybe changing the wave. Here I'm doing it with the self filtering slowly. Close the sound, whatever, slowly. Play with the effects. Maybe play with the release, the ADSR, the attack, and so on. So once I've recorded that sound, I'll go into my next sound. So I'll write another riff. For example, let's see, we have another riff here. That's just a part. Again, I've got it on the system 1, and again I'll play with it. I'll open it, I'll close it, just to give it that mobility, you know. See, now I'm opening a little bit. So we add that to our pad that we had before. It's like a little stabby thing. Then I'll go into my next element, which is more like a motive. And again, it's I'll record the whole track, 5-6 minutes, automating it, bringing it in, you know, and I'm creating the structure of the track as I'm going on, you know, in a very rough way, because then in the post-production of the track, we'll arrange the track, and you know, there'll be bits that aren't so well automated, or maybe one note's gone out of phase or whatever. I mean, we'll quantize it, of course, after, but you know, sometimes the synths make certain, you know, mistakes and stuff, so you'll always take the better pieces, you know, and it doesn't mean you're gonna stick all the elements at the same time on that track. But what we do like to do is to basically do loads of more elements than we're gonna use, and then we start eliminating the elements. So here we have, let's see what we have here. See, we have another synth here. I'm just gonna take the pad out. So this, for example, will come in sometimes, and it's to give it, you know, that movement. We like to do. We'll build around a main riff, and then we'll put all these little, you know, these little things to make it more interesting. And then here, for example, I have another track, which is, but I don't have it on a synth. I think it's the riff of the motive, but it's more like a solo. If you see here, it's a hell of a lot of notes. See, it's more like a solo thing. Well, I think that's the riff, the main riff. So it's basically, you know, for me the creative process is about just getting loads of sounds. There we have the bass, which I also made with the System 1. I basically, what I'll do is I'll record a bass line, and then I'll put a high cut EQ on it to about 200 or 150 to get just to get those sub frequencies. I mean, it depends what sort of bass you want to do. In this sense, in this track, it's more of a sub bass. So by having that sub bass, I'm leaving more room for the synths on top. If I'm gonna do a track which has just a main riff, where the bass is gonna follow the riff, I'll probably make a bass that has more mid frequencies, you know, higher bass frequencies, not just the subs. And that's basically it. I mean, it's not, you know, it's just, it's like a game, you know. It's different layers, and then once you have all the stuff, you basically select what you really want, and you start eliminating. Here you have more of the beat. That would be your whole beat with all the hi-hats. Again, the hi-hats, these are all the hi-hats I'm going to use through the whole track, but I'm going to obviously put different hi-hats in different places. But that's more the next stage, you know. This is the creative stage where you get your really, really rough draft. If you were cooking, it's like you're getting your ingredients together, you know, and then, you know, you're gonna cook a pasta, and you have your meat, your tomato sauce, your onions, a bolognese, you know, for example, and then you have all your spices and your onions and your garlic, but you know, you don't know if you're gonna put a bit of sage or a bit of chili in there to spice it up or whatever, you know. But that's basically it. It's the really rough, you know. That's basically the creative process.
Yeah, so basically I often take what Igor's given me, Pig, and I'm the eliminator. I'm the guy that'll get all that sort of mess and try and make it into something which is a bit more of an arrangement. And as he was explaining, you might give to me 20 tracks of hi-hats, which I'll select the points when they come in the arrangement, as well as writing my tracks myself, which I'll send to him, and he'll also add to or do sort of the same kind of thing. We both like to add a bit of Pig&Dan to all the records, obviously. A lot of things I do are more on the production side when it comes to the end result, for instance on the engineering side, and I want to show you a couple of examples of what we did just with that track. For example, what I've done here is I've taken all those hi-hat tracks, for example, and made them a stem after I have chosen and cut out which pieces I feel should come in at that point in the track. So on this track in particular, where you've got lots of different types of hats, loads of different types of hats. They've all come from the TR8, adding that really nice richness and proper. They're all recorded actually via audio, so you've got a little bit of that old school feel to it, where it's not just sequenced in the box sound. You've actually got raw, proper analog influence into the sound. One thing I would do often when it comes to things like hi-hats is I'll take a tape emulator. If I feel the highs and the hi-hat are biting a bit too hard, and sort of to gel everything back together, I like going back to the old school way of doing it, which is putting it back on tape. And both Pig and I come from old school studios where we actually both learnt to work using tape. So we're acid. For this example, basically, I've added a bit of drive using a fantastic group of plugins, which I do go to a lot, which are by a company called Tone Boosters. They really compete with super expensive plugins like UAD. Their reverbs compete with Lexicon. They are amazing. They have amazing warmth, and a lot of times when I'm grouping drums or I'm adding subs to a bass, and I want that tape compression sound, I'll definitely go for their plugins. Even though I'll try and A/B it with UADs and other really good plugins like the Slate Digital ones, often I'll end up going with this one. It's got a really good set of presets. I hate to say it, I mean, I'm not one to love presets, but they are amazing. This one is called Smooth Highs, and it does exactly what it says. If you listen to it without it and with it, it's adding quite a bit of low end and warmth to the hi-hat sound, but it's also kind of compressing it and limiting it a little bit. So when you're grouping a load of hi-hats together, like when you pass it through real tape compression, it adds a fantastic analog and warm touch like you would find in something tube like a beautiful Masterclass or any of these goodies around here. This guy does a great job. Another one of the real go-to plugins on the Pig&Dan stuff, which, I mean, people say we have a certain sound, which I'm really honoured they do say, and I hope that's a reality, that Pig&Dan, even though we cover a lot of different genres, for instance, the other day Adam Bayer said on the podcast we put out in Drumcode, he said, you know, Pig&Dan have a very large variety of genre, but you always kind of know it's their sound. Well, I'm going to give you one of the tips to one of the reasons that is, and it's an incredible plugin by Audio Damage called Combinat. Combinat is, I don't know how to explain it. It's a tube clipping sort of limiting crunching machine that works on 3 different frequency bands. So you've got, of course, the low, the mid, and the top, but you can really saturate things in a way that can be useful for basses, for a lot of the actual modular analog synth stuff we do, because what we do sometimes, as Pig was saying before, is we'll grow a sound organically through a track. So let's say at the beginning it starts with just subs, and slowly we open the filter and we build it up with reverbs and everything. What this does, it enables you to frequency compress, so it brings everything to the front, but it adds quite a unique sort of dirt to the whole affair, which we just find sexy as it gets. For instance, I'll show you it on a clap. That's without it. Kind of boring. Nice, but it's kind of boring. When you use the juice, you can obviously affect how much you're compressing everything until it's ridiculous, horrific. So, if you want to add a bit of dirt to things, it's definitely the go-to plugin on anything, really. On synths, on basses, on claps. If you want to add some proper bite to something, this is a real go-to plugin, and it's something that every time Pig sends me something over, he's like, yeah, no, put that plug-in on it. You know that one, which one is it? No? You all say that, Pig.
Yeah, the Combinat.
The Combinat. You know, it's the go-to monster plug-in when you want to add dirt. I mean, obviously you want to write a nice fluffy track. It's not the one. Killer. Now, a lot of people, I get a lot of messages on Facebook and stuff from people saying, what is it you're doing to your bass? What is it in the bass end? You seem to have very little conflict between the kick and the subs of the bass, but you still manage to have a lot of pressure in the sub area. Well, there's two things we do. I try and tune kicks so they're not exactly at the same frequency as the bass. So if you've got bass running around 150, 100 hertz, I will tune that kick right down towards like the 60 hertz kick. And I think that's kind of become a bit of a signature thing with our sound, because some of our tracks have much lower kicks than your average techno or tech house record. So a couple of secrets I want to bring to the table are, of course, side chaining. Side chaining is something I don't think it's a secret. A lot of people know about it. If you side chain a bass to the kick drum, you're always going to leave a fair amount of room around what the kick's doing. And you know, in dance music, kick is the most important thing you can have. It's the driving force of any dance record. If you want that to poke out and you don't want it to be waffly, you be very, very clever to side chain to a kick, which I'm just doing right now, actually. So I'm going to bring in the bass. I love these speakers. So as you can see, it's bouncing off the kick, right? If you can hear this on proper speakers, you'll be able to notice that basically there's a lot of space between the bass and the kick. First reason for that, as I explained, is side chaining off the kick. It sometimes can be a bit too much. You might sound a bit trancey if you do it, because it will just be a bit of a rebound off the kick. But in all honesty, you'll judge that yourself when you get to it. Another few things we add in our little chain is a real secret love I have, passion, is the Roswell ringer. Now this is one of the
Roswell ringer?
The Roswell
Sounds
ringer.
like a porn position.
It does.
The sex position. The Roswell
The
ringer.
Roswell ringer.
Get exciting.
The Roswell ringer is a standard.
What's up to the Roswell ringer? Sorry, Kev. Sorry. It is funny.
The Roswell ringer is a standard plugin from Logic. Comes with it, and it's in the pedals section, which is the section for the electric guitar usually. But the Roswell ringer it's a ring modulator that adds, for me, something extremely special to basses. And I can't explain what it does because I just don't have a clue. But it's something I really adore. It's just adding a harmonic sound onto the bass, and I'll let you listen to it for yourself. I don't know why my screen keeps on going off. So, this is the bass without the Roswell ringer. When you bring it in, it adds a kind of stereo fluffiness to it, a sort of ringing sound in the stereo realm. And what we do usually is, because subs shouldn't be stereo, they should always be mono, we'll put a plug-in after it, usually from Brainworks or somebody, where you can control the whole stereo image, but also you can control where the mono stereo image as well. So anything under like 100 hertz, I'm mono. And then I'll push the stereo of everything above it even further apart. This Intel gives another amount of space to the kick, but also brings the bass right up in the stereo image. And it's kind of a trick. When you hear that in a club, it dazzles people, especially if they're a bit, la la. It tricks them into thinking, where's that coming from? That bass is it's coming out of both speakers, but the subs are just driving up the middle. I find that a really very important factor in the Pig&Dan production field. Another necessity in our bass chain is something that really adds a lot of character to any sound, but especially if it's a subsonic sound, and it's not going to stick out big on small speakers. A lot of people really push the low mids as hard as they can, or use a funny kind of expander to do so. But I find the Novatech character, which is a plugin from Plugin Alliance, it adds something far more magical than most plugins I've used for bringing out things that are only subsonic. I'll give you an example. If you listen to this bass, it's proper subs. I mean, there's really nothing. If you look on a graph, everything's really low. This is proper subsonics. It's going to shake any sort of club. When you add the character, immediately it brings an incredible amount of low mids to it, but it doesn't sound cheesy. It's not like, it's still authentic, it's still got all that warmth going on, and most importantly, it doesn't affect the subs that you've originally got excited about with this sort of bass sound. So, I mean, in the long run, when you've got the pedal board, the incredible Roswell ringer, and you've got the Novatech in there, and you've got a side chain on your kick, you're able to really push subsonic basses a lot further, and that's very much part of the Pig&Dan production, Pig&Dan sound. Another plugin that we find essential to, I would say, 90% of our records is the EOS Reverb by Audio Damage, another Audio Damage killer. It's super long, and it has this sound that is it's just different. It's very unique, and for building up things like synths or hi-hats, it adds this tension that is so important in techno records. When you build up a track to come back in, it's going to thump. You know, there's various ways of doing it. A lot of people use white noise. They don't really like white noise. I'm not a big fan of the sort of sample CD white noise thing. And this it'll give you the same effect, but using the elements that you've actually created. So it's a very different way of building up at the end of a breakdown. And I'll just give you an example of how the sound of the EOS is wicked, man. So you see, that can be sort of give you the same effect as white noise, but you can put it on synths, you can put it on anything really. It always sounds wicked. And I almost hate to be giving this away because it's definitely one of those plugins where people are like, oh, never heard of that, never used that before. And I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't tell you about it, because it's kind of a bit of a Pig&Dan secret. Although I'm sure there's thousands of people out there that know about it. Just in our realm, I've been asked about what's our go-to reverb. We do love Lexicons, we do love some other makes of reverb, but this is the longest one. It's proper long. You need good processing power. It's long and it's badass. Obviously, we write a lot of tracks when we're actually traveling, and we, instead of using downtime on aeroplanes and in hotels to relax like we probably should do, we are kind of addicted to the creative process, and we're very prolific in the way that we almost try and write tracks to finish just before we're going to play, so we can actually play them out at the gig. We base most of our sets are at least 80% of Pig&Dan music. So I spoke to Bo from 1087 Mastering, where we're actually sitting today, our mastering engineer, about what is it I can use just to limit the master channel best, so when we play it out it's not going to sound completely rubbish. And he was the one that told me about the Ozone by Isotope. Isotope Ozone is a limiter that is super fast. So if you bring it down right onto 3 or 2.7 milliseconds or a bit below, it's going to catch those peaks without really sacrificing too much of the volume of the overall master. It has a sound which, for me, it's unbeatable. And I know for a fact that even though Bo uses all this gear, which is amazing, fantastic, beautiful tube sounding limiters and EQs and everything, often he'll bung one of these on at the end, because it's just an unbeatable limiter when it comes to catching those proper digital peaks. If we compare, the signal I'm putting through something that's limiting up to 5 decibels, it's knocking off the peaks, and you compare the sound of those two, you can't really hear it. It's amazing. It's so transparent. You haven't got any saturation or any effect on the actual end result of the sound, although it's a lot louder. You know, you're talking about a huge amount of headroom being sacrificed, but you don't hear it. And there's a lot of limiters out there that say they can do that, but honestly, in my personal opinion, I think the Ozone is definitely the winner.
I am Piggy, and here's
Dan.
And you've just been watching the creative process on our track Holly, which is going to be coming out this year, but we don't know when, on Adam Bayer's True Soul.
We're looking forward to that.
And remember, music is about having fun.